Welcome to the Intimate Marriage Podcast, where I teach educated, successful couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships so that you can stop compromising and start feeling fully alive in your relationship. I'm your host, Alexandra Stockwell, aka the Intimacy Doctor. I'm a physician and an intimate marriage expert. My husband and I have been married for 26 years. We have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing relationship. I've also shown hundreds of couples how to do so as well. If you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place. I will show you how. Now let's dive in. We all know there is no happily ever after. It's not that once you find the right person, you make a commitment to one another, then everything is smooth sailing, good communication, and bliss. We know that isn't true, even in the most fantastic marriages. In fact, I'm reminded of my interview with Jim and Ruth Sharon. They've been married for 51 years, and I'll link to that episode in the show notes. But basically, they describe so much growth and evolution, challenges that they faced and learned to face. That is what contributes to, well, in their case, a marriage where she's having the best orgasms of her life after being married for 51 years. In my marriage, we've been together 26 years, and I am so grateful for the challenging times, the growth and learning, the places where I compromised, the places where my feelings were hurt, because all of those provided a catalyst for the extraordinary marriage I now enjoy. So once again, we all know that the absolute best marriages cannot really be summed up accurately by saying they got married and lived happily ever after. However, there's another idea which is believed, which also isn't true. And it is this. Many people believe, perhaps you do too, that when people are happy with one another in their relationship, things are wonderful. Things are great when there are no stressors and you can spend time together and everything is going well. Then your relationship is going to be amazing, assuming you really enjoy one another and are attracted to one another and so forth. And then in times of challenge, times of stress, when one of you is sick or both of you are going through COVID, or there's real financial difficulty, or any other kind of super intense thing, then the assumption is when you're both really stressed and impacted, the relationship will be hard. You might still be really supportive of one another, but it isn't a time for closeness because your attention is going into whatever the challenge is. And then when the external circumstances are more positive again, when COVID is more manageable, meaning if you're a physician and you are working in the hospital starting in March 2020, that first half year, sometimes longer, was just so intense, few people working, many people dying. I mean, just so intense. So I'm perfectly clear that COVID isn't over, but for most people, the intensity of being an inpatient physician during that time has really softened, and people are living with their families again, not staying in a hotel so as not to infect loved ones, things like that. So you'd think, okay, now the relationship should really be thriving. Or let's say you have real financial stress, one or both of you are laid off, you're scraping by, going into debt every single month, things are really hard on the relationship, then you both have jobs, they're better paying than they were before, and you would think the relationship would easily revive and resume and be available for pleasure and enjoyment and connection again. We see this phenomenon in many areas of life where things can be challenging. It also happens in the case of infidelity. I'm trying to describe different scenarios where it's either directly about the relationship or it's not directly about the relationship, but it impacts the relationship in a huge way. When the challenge is over, then we think the relationship can kind of get back to normal. And most of the time, that doesn't happen. If you're a physician who really was stressed out, whose relationship was stressed out during COVID, then you know what I'm talking about. If you've navigated a child being really sick or infertility, I'm not going to list all of the personally catastrophic events that a couple can face. But whatever the situation is, if you've been through something like this that feels out of your control, and again, whether it's directly about the relationship or it's not, it has impacted how you and your partner connect with one another, then you and the people around you may think, if it's infertility, once you have the baby or babies, your relationship should be beautiful again. Once you're living together and not wearing masks at home and not going crazy disinfecting and not constantly stressed and panicked about COVID, then you should be able to connect with one another again. After all, your relationship was strong and beautiful in the first place. This just is not how it works. In fact, I'm reminded of a statistic that I heard years ago, so I don't know what the reference is, and I don't know if current data would reveal the same results, but it's from like 20 years ago, where when couples get divorced, they often look to the children to make sure the children are okay. And typically, children actually are okay. They can navigate the stress, they can navigate the heartbreak, they can navigate the disruption to their lives and seem to be doing just fine. And then 6 to 18 months later, once the transition is completed and things are stable enough, that's when you can really tell how impacted a child is by divorce, how destroyed they are or not, how resilient they are. But the point is that when the divorce happens and in the month or 2 or 3 following, that's not really when you get to find out what flavor of impact the divorce has on your child. You need to wait until everything else is settled and the new routines are familiar before assessing that impact. Likewise, for a couple who's navigated infertility, which is one of the most unbelievably stressful situations that I think if someone hasn't gone through it, it's really hard to imagine. I have not gone through it, but I have been very close to many couples who have, and so I have been privileged to have a window into what that's like. You would think once you are successful in becoming parents, that the challenges and stresses of infertility would fade away because you have what you want. You have your family now. Or again, with COVID or financial situations. Anyway, you get the idea. And Actually, when the environmental circumstances have impacted a relationship, and then the environmental circumstances improve, return to normal, maybe they're even better, the relationship does not track and follow that change as rapidly as it may have when things in the environment got worse and then the relationship became more challenging. So, what to do about it? What to do about it if you're in a relationship which is good, it's solid, there's a lot of love, and you've been through one of these kinds of experiences. Maybe it's one I've named, maybe it's a different one, and you're telling yourself things should be back to normal. You two should be connecting well again, but actually, you're not. And in this kind of situation, it actually can be quite difficult to admit that to yourself because you think it should be different than it is. And that's always a challenging spot to navigate. I'm going to tell a story of a couple. I spoke with them last winter, and I'm just going to call them Jasmine and Jonathan. So Jasmine and Jonathan are both physicians, and they both are inpatient doctors. Actually, Jonathan is an ER doctor and Jasmine is an ICU doctor. So the two of them were tremendously influenced by COVID when it started and for those months after, which were really excruciating for so many reasons, including initially doctors didn't know how to treat their patients. And that is so stressful and devastating because we're there to help. And when we can't help, it just causes an extra layer of existential crisis. Anyway, Jasmine and Jonathan, during the first 6 to 8 months of the pandemic, they were both used to navigating crisis. They rose to the situation. They reorganized their family life. They hired additional help to take care of their 3 girls. They figured the whole thing out. They texted one another, and they were compassionate towards themselves and one another. They sometimes had little, tense exchanges, but basically they knew they were on the same team, and they knew they were navigating this monster in the face of their devotion to their marriage and family as best they could. It's been well over a year that phase has softened, has thawed, and it just isn't as intense. And now it's more like the regular intensity of practicing medicine. But their relationship has not recovered yet. They're not open-hearted with one another. They're not really sharing what's alive inside. It's like there are all these invisible barriers. It's like they have emotional PPE, meaning protective wear, the gowns and masks and all of that. They have emotional protective gear. And so when they reach out to touch one another, either literally or metaphorically, they can't connect because there's all this protection in the way. They each feel vulnerable, especially Jasmine. Jonathan took up meditating, which is kind of a courageous thing to do when he was spending so much time alone and wasn't able to be with his wife and children. Jasmine didn't. But either way, they weren't really able to find their way back to one another, which is why they reached out to take the Aligned and Hot Marriage program and work with me privately a little bit. So I've wanted until this point in this episode to really describe the landscape of this challenge, which isn't really spoken about very often. We know about individuals who come back from war zones and have PTSD or have suffered emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, like or the whole town of people in Uvalde. Like, we are familiar with the phenomenon of PTSD in relation to individuals who have lived through particular experiences. And there isn't a PTSD equivalent term for relationships. It's the individual who's experiencing this. And I'm just really wanting to presence this because most couples have gone through either a mild or intense season in their relationship that you've had this phenomenon happen where things were really tough and then things weren't tough, but your relationship didn't just revive the way it happens when you add water to a chia pet or a plant that is, the soil's dry and the leaves are turning brown and you water it and then it revives. So I wanted to really describe this phenomenon in case you're in it now or you've had it happen, and in either situation it was kind of confusing and you were thinking to yourself, it shouldn't be this way. Well, it is this way. That's the phenomenon. And now the rest of this episode, I really want to talk about how to get out of this trap, how to heal and evolve this dynamic. The very first step is to let go of thinking things should be different than they are. When my husband and I were in medical school, we had a classmate who used to always say, don't fight with reality. And that is actually something that has been very helpful, that we've used in serious times. We've used it as a joke. We've used it in all kinds of contexts. Don't fight with reality. It just isn't helpful. So you can believe you shouldn't feel the way you do. You can believe that your relationship shouldn't be in the phase it's in as much as you want, but it's not helpful. And it definitely does not lead to changing things. So the first thing is to accept that you are where you are. In fact, this is a very basic principle in all personal growth, that you want to know what your goals are, what your vision is, where you want to be headed, and also where you are now, so you can close the gap. But in any case, the first step in this situation is to accept that you are where you are. And then the second step is to allow yourself to dream of things being better, to open your heart to imagine being able to connect with one another in a nourishing, beautiful way, with ease and with grace. Whether that is a simple conversation or deeper emotional sharing or passion and sexuality that really lights you both on fire. Even though none of that might be happening now, allow yourself to connect with the possibility. Allow yourself to dream and imagine and to feel the feelings that come with that being true. And the third step is to really feel what you're feeling and mourn what has been. Sometimes you might do steps 2 and 3 in the opposite order. If you can't open your heart and dream of really having a beautiful, lush, intimate relationship again, then you need to do this step first. And grieving and mourning, well, it really depends what the situation is, what that's going to look like, but certainly journal, write a letter to yourself in that phase, write a letter to your partner where you express how disappointed you were in how your partner was. Or write a letter to God, angry about the whole situation. In other words, if you're not able to really open and reconnect with your partner, it's because even though the circumstances have evolved and improved, you have a lot of feelings that are connected with the time of the crisis, with the time of the challenge. And those really need to be felt and then shed. I'll share 2 situations in which I have done this myself. So my husband and I are both physicians, and for various reasons, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but after we completed our residency, we had a time when financially we were in very severe straits. We were basically 6 weeks away from declaring bankruptcy, and I single-handedly, with the moral support of my husband, turned that around. We got completely out of debt through a number of different very conscious choices, miracles, a lot of different things. But this really was my singular focus to transform this. And so, yes, of course, my husband and I collaborated on all of the actions we took, but it was my strategy and energetics that really shifted things. So the point is that I was familiar with getting out of debt. I had done that successfully. And it took a really long time for me to learn how to do more than get out of debt and actually start to build savings and increase our net worth. It was much easier for my husband to do that, but I had been so focused on going from really stressed about money to neutral and managing. And I had done that so well and actually pretty quickly, I thought I would just keep on going and we would be able to achieve our financial goals in a wonderful way. But that's not what happened, because once I knew that I could get us from debt to breaking even and being comfortable, it was a whole other mindset to learn how to increase our assets and build financial wealth. Similarly, I love working. I love working and I love my family life. And I'm actually not that good at going on vacation. There are many days when I think, oh, it'd be so nice to have a vacation. But in my whole life, when I've gone on vacation, I haven't fully relaxed. I've taken the work attitude with me on vacation, and I'm particularly aware of this because I'm going on vacation next week, and my biggest goal is that I really can get into the vacation mindset. So I'm doing the things that I've just shared. First of all, believing that I can relax and have an amazing vacation. I've made this transformation in every area of my life, and so it's time to do it on taking vacations. I'm imagining what that will feel like. And I'm journaling and doing mindset work and feeling the feelings and getting clarity about why that has been difficult for me in the past. It's actually very funny to me because I love being sensual. I love working. I love my relationships. Like, you would think Yeah, going on vacation is just more of the same thing. But this is an example of the phenomenon I'm describing that just isn't the case. So if your relationship is still suffering from events that are no longer happening, first of all, I'm going to just repeat the steps, but don't think it should be different than it is. Be compassionate and accept the reality. Let yourself open your heart and your mind to how good it actually can be, how much more ease and pleasure the two of you can experience together again. And then feel whatever you're feeling. Don't keep trying to hold it at bay and dial down the volume and compartmentalize. Make room to feel your feelings so that they also will pass. And at a minimum, be kind to yourself and be kind to your partner, and let yourself have a conversation about how you thought things would be better when the crisis passed and you wish they were better. That's a good first step to take with one another. So if this resonates, please tell me. I'm really wanting to share content that is valuable for you. So if this resonated, if this is something that opened your mind, opened your heart, touched you, or inspired you in any way, please send me a DM on Facebook or Instagram, or go to my website and fill out the contact form. I would love to hear your experience and have this be more of a dialogue between me and you. So I've shared my part and look forward to hearing your response. And if what I've described is a phenomenon that you're in, the Aligned and Hot Marriage program is for you. It starts off so gently with step-by-step instruction in how to revive the connection between the two of you, how to expand it, open it up, how to find your way to one another at much deeper levels. So if you're disconnected, this is an amazing program for you. And if you're feeling connected, but you want to go deeper with one another, experience more connection, more closeness, and more pleasure. So again, whether you're feeling disconnected or you're feeling connected, the Aligned and Hot Marriage program truly will show you how to build more of the relationship that you dream of. I'm really excited to share this program with you. So if you're listening and you want it, go to www.alignedhotmarriage.com. And for anyone who listens to this episode, I'm really excited to give you a coupon code. The program is normally $3,000. And when you go to check out and get ready to pay, there's a place you can put in a coupon code. Put in, all in capital letters, our time. OURTIME, and it will be just $9.97. This isn't going to last forever. I'm recording this episode so that it is available for you to listen on July 20th, and this coupon code is going to be good. Well, I haven't quite decided. So go ahead and enroll in the program and get yourself the tools that you need in order to revive and reconnect. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Intimate Marriage Podcast. If you're ready to deepen your relationship and create a truly intimate, delicious, and vibrant marriage, head over to alexandrastockwell.com and choose the program that's right for you.